Welcome to Scully's Sleep Stories. Before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable. Let the days soften around you, and settle in for a calm documentary made for curious minds. If these stories help you rest, learn, or simply enjoy a quieter part of the day, please consider liking this episode and subscribing to the channel. Now, when you are ready, let us begin. Chapter 1. A Quiet Question at Bedtime. In a quiet room, under a low and gentle light, a modern bed can seem like the most ordinary thing in the world. A sheet lies smooth beneath a blanket. A pillow holds its familiar shape. Beneath everything is the mattress, thick, padded, and steady, made to support the body without asking much attention in return. Most of the time, a mattress is simply there. It may hold layers we cannot see, steel coils that bend and rise again, latex that feels springy and soft, polyurethane foam, memory foam that slowly changes shape under warmth and pressure, or padding made from cotton, wool, and other fibers. Around these layers may be stitched fabrics, sometimes natural, sometimes synthetic, all brought together into one large object with a known size and a familiar purpose. Yet this familiar mattress is only one chapter in a much longer human story. For many people in many times and places, thick mattresses, standardized bed sizes, washable sheets, and private bedrooms were not ordinary features of daily life. They were either unknown, uncommon, or available only to some households. The idea that each person might have a separate room, a permanent bed frame, a soft padded mattress, and neatly fitted bedding is in the broad sweep of history, quite recent. But this does not mean that people before modern mattresses slept without care or comfort. Human beings have always been thoughtful about rest. They have always looked for warmth, softness, dryness, safety, and familiarity. They have gathered what was near at hand and shaped it into something useful. A sleeping place might be made from grasses cut from a field, reeds gathered near water, leaves with a clean scent, straw from a harvest, hides from animals, wool from sheep, linen from flax, wood from trees, rope twisted from plant fibers, or feathers carefully saved and sewn into cloth. A mattress, in the simplest sense, is a padded sleeping surface. Bedding is a broader word. It can mean the whole collection of things arranged for rest: mats, blankets, sheets, pillows, furs, quilts, sacks filled with straw, or woven covers laid over a frame. In many times and places, a bed was not one object at all. It was a set of layers. One layer might lift the body from the floor, another might soften the ground, another might hold warmth, another might be folded away in the morning. A sleeping place could be raised on legs, stretched with rope, rolled out on a floor, spread over a rug, hung from hooks. It could be shared by family members, used by travelers at an inn, or arranged in a corner of a room that served many purposes. A space might be used for eating, working, visiting, and resting, all in the same day. This is what we mean by multifunctional, used for more than one purpose. So, when we ask how people slept before mattresses, we are really asking a wider and gentler question. How did people use the materials around them to make a place of rest? How did they keep warm in cold seasons and cool in warm ones? How did they lift themselves away from damp earth or welcome the firmness of a clean woven mat? How did custom, climate, household life, and personal habit shape what felt comfortable? Comfort is not the same in every culture or every century. A thick, soft mattress may feel ideal to one person, while another may prefer the cool firmness of a mat, the steady warmth of a heated floor, or the airy support of a woven frame. What feels restful depends on what the body knows, what the climate asks, and what daily life provides. It also depends on wealth and status, because textiles, feathers, woodwork, and fine sheets often required time, skill, and resources. Still, even simple bedding could be carefully arranged and deeply familiar. Imagine hands smoothing a blanket at the end of a day. Imagine a mat being unrolled, a hide being shaken clean, a straw-filled sack being turned and settled, a linen sheet being drawn flat across a wooden frame. These gestures are quiet, but they belong to a very old human art. They show attention, they show routine, they show the wish to make a small place softer, warmer, cleaner, and more welcoming. Across history, evidence for bedding can be uneven. Wood may survive in dry tombs or buried ruins, Metal fittings may remain long after the cloth has vanished. Written records may describe the possessions of wealthy households more often than ordinary ones. Plant fibers, hides, and simple textiles often decay, leaving only faint traces for archaeologists to study. So the story of sleep surfaces is sometimes told through fragments: a woven pattern pressed into clay, a layer of ash, a list in an old household inventory, a bed frame preserved by unusual conditions, or a picture painted on a wall. Still, these fragments are enough to show a rich and varied history. They remind us that people did not wait for modern mattresses to seek rest with care. Long before steel coils and memory foam, there were grasses and reeds, wool and linen, wood and rope, skins and feathers, mats and platforms, folds and layers. From this quiet modern room, it is possible to let the familiar softness of today open a door into older forms of comfort. The smooth sheet and padded mattress slowly give way in the imagination to a sheltered place at dusk, to dry grasses laid by hand, to leaves with a faint clean scent, to hides warm near a small fire, and to the steady glow of firelight on stone. And there, at the edge of the earliest human resting places, the long story begins. Chapter 2: The Earliest Resting Places. Long before there were mattresses filled with cotton wool, springs, or foam, people still made places for rest with care. They did not simply lie down wherever they happened to be. As far back as we can glimpse, human beings seem to have noticed the difference between bare ground and a surface softened by leaves, grasses, reeds, or skins. They noticed warmth and dryness. They noticed the comfort of a sheltered place, the usefulness of a fire, and the quiet value of familiar materials arranged by hand. It is difficult to see these earliest resting places clearly, because most bedding is made from things that do not last. Wood decays, leaves crumble, grass returns to soil, animal hides and woven plant fibers can vanish completely unless unusual conditions preserve them. Archaeologists, the people who study physical traces of the past, often work with fragments, tiny plant remains, layers of ash, impressions in the ground, or microscopic signs that something was once placed there. From these small clues, a gentle picture begins to form. In a sheltered cave at dusk, perhaps a group gathered dry grasses from nearby ground. Some grasses might have been long and springy. Others might have been soft enough to bend easily beneath the body. Leaves could be added, and reeds or sedges might be laid down in layers. A sedge is a grass-like plant that often grows near water. Its stems and leaves can be gathered, dried, and spread out. These materials could make a resting surface warmer than stone, cleaner than damp earth, and more comfortable for a body that had walked, gathered, carried, and worked through the day. One of the oldest known examples comes from Border Cave in South Africa. There, researchers have found evidence interpreted as grass bedding, dating to around 200,000 years ago. That number reaches so far back that it feels almost like looking toward a horizon through mist. We cannot know every detail of how people used the space each night. We cannot say that each person had a separate bed or that the bedding looked like anything familiar today. But the traces suggest that grasses were arranged intentionally, forming layered places for resting or living. Some of this ancient plant bedding appears to have been placed over ash. An ash layer is what remains after fire has burned wood, grasses, or other material. Ash can be soft and dry, and it may also help discourage crawling insects. This does not mean it solved every problem, or that we know exactly why people used it, but it suggests careful attention. A clean layer of ash, covered by fresh grasses, could create a more pleasant surface. It could separate the body from the ground, and perhaps make the resting place a little easier to maintain. Another important site is Sabudu Cave, also in South Africa, where plant bedding has been found from around 77,000 years ago. At Sabudu, researchers identified layers that included sedges and aromatic leaves. Aromatic simply means having a noticeable scent. Some of the leaves may have come from plants with insect-repelling properties. When crushed or warmed by the air, such leaves might have given off a faint green fragrance. Imagine the quiet scent of plants under stone shelter, mixed with the low warmth of a fire and the cooler breath of evening outside the cave mouth. These early resting places were not mattresses in the modern sense. In archaeology, the word bedding can mean repeated layers of plant material used as a resting surface, a work surface, or a living floor. A group might have sat there, prepared food there, rested there, and returned to the same sheltered area again and again. Over time, old layers could be renewed. Fresh grasses could be added. Worn plant material might be swept away or burned. Burning old bedding may have helped clean the area, clearing out debris and making room for a new layer. Fire, too, was part of the quiet arrangement of night. A small fire could provide warmth, light, and some protection. Its glow would touch the stone walls, making shadows move slowly across the cave. Near it, people could rest close together, sharing warmth and the reassurance of company. Animal skins may have been used in some places, especially where warmth was needed. A hide laid over grasses or wrapped around shoulders could hold body heat through cooler hours. In other climates, plant layers alone might have been enough. There was no single way that early humans rested. A group near a river might use reeds or sedges. A group on open grassland might use dry grasses and hides. In wooded places, leaves, bark, branches, and skins might all become part of the resting surface. The materials came from the local world, chosen because they were near at hand and suited to the season. Comfort was not only softness, it was also warmth, dryness, safety, familiarity, and the simple knowledge that a place had been prepared. So the earliest resting places remind us of a long human habit, arranging the world gently around the body. A hollow softened with grasses, a layer of ash beneath fresh plants, a skin warm near the fire, leaves with a faint clean scent. These were practical choices, but also careful ones. They show hands gathering, sorting, spreading, and renewing. As evening deepened in those ancient shelters, the firelight would lower to a steadier glow. Dry grasses might rustle softly as people settled close to one another. Outside, the night air moved across stone, grass, and trees. Inside, in the small circle of warmth, the earliest bedding held the shape of human care. And from these quiet layers of plants, ash, and hides, the story moves onward toward other simple inventions. Skins carried from place to place, fibers twisted and woven, and mats laid smooth at the end of the day. Chapter 3: Sleeping on Skins, Grass, and Woven Mats. The 4 formal bed frames became common in many places. People often made their resting places from materials that could be gathered, shaped, folded, carried, and renewed. A bed was not always a heavy object standing in one room. It might be a hide spread near a hearth, a mat rolled beside a wall, a blanket folded in layers, or a soft place made fresh each evening from grasses and leaves. These arrangements were practical and often skillfully made. They belonged to a world where household things were expected to serve more than one purpose. A woven mat might be used for sitting during the day and resting at night. A hide might be bedding in the evening, warmth around the shoulders in cold air, or a bundle cover while traveling. A folded blanket might soften the ground, wrap a child, or be carried from one shelter to another. The boundary between furniture, clothing, bedding, and shelter was often gentle and flexible. One of the oldest and most widespread forms of bedding is the mat. A mat is simple in idea, but not simple in the hands. To make one, people gathered grasses, reeds, rushes, palm leaves, or other long plant fibers. A reed is a tall plant that often grows near water, with a firm stem. A rush is similar, and both could be cut, dried, split, and woven. In some places, the fibers were laid in the sun until they lost their dampness. In others, they were soaked or softened so they could bend without breaking. Then patient hands crossed one strand over another, again and again, until a flat surface formed. The result could be light, clean, and useful. A woven mat lifted the body slightly from dust or bare earth. It created a smooth boundary between the person and the ground. It could be shaken outside in the morning, rolled into a bundle, leaned against a wall, or carried to another place. In warm climates, a mat was often more comfortable than thick bedding, because air could move around it. Firmness, airflow, and cleanliness were forms of comfort too. Imagine a household in a warm region after the day's heat has softened. The ground has cooled a little. The walls, if there are walls, have released the warmth they held. A mat of palm or reed is unrolled with a dry whisper. A cloth is laid over it, or perhaps a thin blanket is folded at one edge. Someone smooths the surface with the palm of a hand, pressing down a curled corner, straightening the woven lines. The mat is not an absence of a bed, it is the bed, carefully prepared, suited to the evening air. In colder places, the needs were different. The ground could draw warmth away from the body, and bedding had to help hold warmth close. This is where animal hides, furs, and wool became especially useful. Insulation means a material's ability to keep warmth in, and hides and furs do this well. A hide has a dense surface and fur traps small pockets of air. Wool, too, is a remarkable fiber. Even when made into a blanket or pressed into felt, it holds warmth while still allowing some breathability. Felt is made by pressing and matting wool fibers together until they become a dense fabric. It does not need to be woven in the same way as a mat. Instead, moisture, pressure, and motion help the fibers cling to one another. Felted wool could be made into pads, rugs, tent coverings, and bedding. In regions of grassland or mountain cold, layers of felt and wool provided softness and warmth, while still being portable enough for people who moved with herds or seasons. A hide might be warmed near a low fire, not too close, just enough to take away the chill. A wool blanket might be folded twice and laid over it. A fur could be placed with the soft side upward or used as a covering. These materials were valuable because they answered several needs at once. They softened the surface beneath the body. They kept warmth from escaping. They could be rolled, carried, aired, and repaired. Climate shaped bedding, as surely as it shaped houses, clothing, and food. In a dry, warm place, a reed or palm mat could be ideal. In a cold northern region, furs and wool might be more welcome. In a damp area, people might use thicker layers or raised bedding on low platforms to separate it from moisture. Raised platforms were not always elaborate furniture. Sometimes they were simple arrangements of wood, brush, or woven material that helped keep a sleeping surface drier and cleaner. There was no single path from simple to better. A thick, soft surface is only one kind of comfort. In some places, a firm mat that could be cleaned each day was wiser than a heavy stuffed bed. In other places, layers of hide and wool were the careful answer to cold. In still others, bedding changed with the season. A household might use lighter mats in summer, heavier blankets in winter, and fresh plant material when it was available. The making and keeping of bedding was part of ordinary rhythm. Grass fibers were dried in the sun, reed mats were shaken outside, hides were stretched, scraped, cured, and softened. Blankets were folded and refolded. Wool was combed, spun, woven, felted, or stitched. A sleeping place was renewed through these quiet acts. It was not only a surface, but a small daily practice of care. In many communities, bedding stayed close to the ground because the household itself was arranged that way. People cooked, worked, sat, talked, and rested in shared spaces. A mat could be brought out when needed and put away when morning returned. This made rooms flexible. It also made bedding part of the visible life of the household, handled by many hands and adapted to each day's use. A reed mat might lie near a doorway where air moved gently. A folded blanket might rest beside a hearth. A child's small hide might be tucked near an elder's larger one. A traveler might keep a skin or blanket tied with belongings, ready for the next day's road. In each case, the bedding held the memory of touch. Shaken clean, warmed, carried, smoothed, and laid down again. As time passed, some societies began to make more permanent sleeping furniture. Frames of wood appeared, with woven supports stretched across them. Bedding could be lifted above the floor, away from dust and small pests, and into moving air. One of the clearest early examples comes from ancient Egypt, where warm nights, skilled woodworking, and pale linen came together in the raised bed. There the story moves from mats and hides close to the earth, toward wooden frames, woven cords, and the quiet night breeze along the Nile. Chapter 4: Ancient Egypt and the Raised Bed. In the warm lands of ancient Egypt, where the Nile moved steadily through fields of green and gold, the evening brought a gentle change to the air. The heat of the day softened. Courtyards grew quieter. Pale walls, warmed by sunlight for many hours, slowly released their heat into the deepening dusk. In houses near the river, a breeze might pass through an open doorway, carrying with it the faint coolness of water, mud brick, linen, and night. Here, among the many sleeping places of the ancient world, we find some of the clearest early evidence for raised beds. A raised bed is simply a sleeping surface lifted above the floor on a frame. It was not the same as a modern mattress, with thick foam or springs hidden inside. It was more often a carefully made wooden structure, with a woven surface stretched across it, and layers of bedding placed on top. Ancient Egypt gives us especially strong examples because dry conditions helped preserve objects that would have vanished in wetter places. Wood, cord, linen, and even delicate household goods could sometimes survive for thousands of years, especially when placed in tombs. Many of the beds known to us belong to wealthy or high-status people, what historians often call elite households. Elite simply means people with wealth, rank, or special position in society. Their belongings were more likely to be carefully made, carefully stored, and in some cases buried with them. An Egyptian bed frame might be made of wood, shaped by skilled hands and joined with care. Across the frame there could be a support of woven cord, strips of leather, or plant fiber. This woven support acted a little like a firm net, holding the body above the ground. Some beds had legs carved in the shape of animal feet, a detail that gave the furniture a graceful, living quality. The bed might seem almost to stand lightly in the room, its feet touching the floor while the sleeping surface rested above the dust. Raising the body off the floor had many practical benefits. It allowed air to move beneath the sleeper, which could be welcome in a warm climate. It helped keep bedding away from dust and from the daily activity of the household floor. It could also create a little distance from insects or small pests that moved along the ground. No sleeping arrangement solved every problem completely, of course, but a raised frame offered a cleaner, cooler, and more orderly place to rest. The bedding itself would have depended on wealth, season, and household custom. Ancient Egyptians valued linen, a cloth made from the fibers of the flax plant. Flax grows with slender stems, and from those stems people learned to draw out fibers, spin them into thread, and weave them into fabric. Linen could be fine and smooth, and in Egypt it became one of the most important textiles. A piece of pale linen laid over a bed or folded near the sleeping place would have caught the last lamplight softly. It was a material of daily use, but also of skill, labor, and care. Instead of soft pillows like many people use today, some Egyptians used headrests, especially in wealthier settings. A headrest was a shaped support for the head or neck. It might be made of wood, stone, ivory, or other materials. To modern eyes, a headrest can look firm, even unfamiliar, but it belonged to a different tradition of comfort and support. Like many objects from the past, it reminds us that comfort is not one single thing. It is shaped by habit, climate, custom, and what the body has come to know. Some of the most famous Egyptian beds were found in the tomb of Tutankhamun, the young pharaoh whose burial goods survived in remarkable condition. His tomb contained several beds, including folding beds and ceremonial beds. Ceremonial means used for ritual or symbolic purposes, not necessarily for ordinary use every night. These beds show extraordinary craftsmanship, with forms and decorations that belong to royal life. They are beautiful evidence, but they are not a simple picture of how every Egyptian slept. For many ordinary Egyptians, sleeping places were probably much simpler. Some may have used mats woven from reeds or other plant fibers. Others may have rested on low platforms, folded cloth, or modest bedding arranged in a practical part of the home. A mat could be rolled, shaken, aired, and laid down again when needed. A simple platform could keep bedding off the floor without the expense of a finely made wooden bed. As in so many places and times, there was no single Egyptian way to sleep. There were many ways, shaped by family, work, wealth, space, and the rhythm of the seasons. Still, the raised Egyptian bed offers a quiet turning point in the long story of sleeping surfaces. It shows people thinking carefully about the space between the body and the ground. It shows the value of airflow, cleanliness, and order. It shows carpenters, weavers, and textile makers all contributing to the nightly arrangement of rest. A bed was not just one object. It was a small gathering of materials: wood from trees, cord twisted from fiber, linen woven from flax, perhaps a headrest shaped by a patient craftsperson's hand. As night settled over an Egyptian household, the scene might have become very still. A small oil lamp burned low. Linen lay pale against the darker wood of a frame. Courtyard shadows deepened. Somewhere beyond the walls, the Nile moved through the darkness, steady and quiet. On a raised bed, on a mat, or on a simple platform, each person found the familiar support their household could provide. And as that ancient courtyard grows calm, our view can widen beyond Egypt, across the lands of the Near East, and the Mediterranean, where other households arranged their own resting places with reeds, wool, wood, linen, couches, pallets, and woven mats, each one suited to the life around it. Chapter 5: Mesopotamia, Greece, and the Mediterranean Household. In the warm lands between rivers and seas, the sleeping place was often woven into the life of the household. It was not always hidden away in a separate room, and it was not always a single object used only at night. A place for rest might also be a place to sit, to recline, to talk quietly with family, or to receive a guest. In many ancient homes, furniture and bedding had a gentle flexibility. A mat could be unrolled, a blanket folded, a couch used by day and by night. In ancient Mesopotamia, the region between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, beds and couches appear in texts, images, and objects left behind. Mesopotamia included many peoples and many centuries, so there was no single Mesopotamian bed. A wealthy household in one city might have had a wooden bed or couch with textiles laid over it. A more modest home might have used reed mats, folded cloth, or simple bedding close to the floor. The details changed with time, place, and means, as household things usually do. Reeds were especially important in Mesopotamia. They grew in marshes and along waterways, tall and straight, useful for building, weaving, covering, and furnishing. A reed is a plant with a firm stem, often found near water, and in skilled hands it can become a mat, a screen, a basket, or part of a shelter. Reed mats were common household objects. They could be laid along a wall, spread across a floor, or rolled up when not needed. Their surfaces were firm, airy, and practical. They could be shaken out, moved, and replaced when worn. One may imagine a room of packed earth or clay, its walls holding the warmth of the day and then slowly cooling after sunset. A reed mat rests beside the wall. A length of wool cloth is folded nearby. Perhaps there is a low wooden frame, or perhaps there is only the mat itself, made comfortable by layers. In such a space, bedding was not necessarily separate from daily life. The same room might hold work, meals, conversations, storage, and rest. As the household grew quiet, familiar objects took on their evening purpose. Materials varied. Wood, where available and affordable, could be shaped into frames. Leather might be stretched or used as a covering. Wool textiles made from the fleece of sheep offered warmth and softness. Linen made from flax plant fibers could provide a smoother, cooler layer. These materials were not always gathered into something like a modern mattress. Often comfort came from arrangement. A mat beneath, a pad or folded cloth above, a covering nearby, each piece adding its own quality. Across the Mediterranean world, similar layers of use and meaning surrounded the sleeping place. In ancient Greece, one important piece of furniture was called a klein. A klein was a reclining couch or bed. It could be used for resting, sleeping, dining, and social gatherings. The word does not match perfectly with any one modern object. It was not exactly a bed, not exactly a sofa, and not exactly a dining chair. It belonged to a world where reclining could be part of eating, talking, and receiving others. A Greek klein might have a wooden frame, sometimes with woven supports beneath the bedding. Woven supports were strips, cords, or bands that held the surface up, a little like a firm net within the frame. Over this could be placed a mattress or pad, along with blankets or coverings. Wool blankets were common and useful, warm in cooler seasons, and durable in everyday life. Linen coverings could be lighter and smoother, especially in warmer weather. As in many places, the exact arrangement depended on wealth, region, season, and custom. The word mattress can be a little broad when we look into the ancient past. A mattress is simply a padded sleeping surface, but the padding might be quite different from the thick mattresses familiar today. In the ancient Mediterranean, stuffing materials could include wool, straw, or chaff. Chaff means the dry husks separated from grain after harvest. It was light and available in farming communities, and when enclosed in cloth, it could make a simple pad. Feathers were also used in wealthier settings, where softer and more costly bedding could be gathered and maintained. Still, it is helpful not to imagine one standard Greek bed or one standard Mesopotamian couch. The evidence we have is uneven. Some comes from written records, some from art, and some from objects that survived by chance. Texts and images often tell us more about wealthier households than ordinary ones. Furniture words can be difficult to translate neatly, because ancient people did not always divide their rooms and objects the way modern households do. A couch might be a bed, A bed might be a place to sit. A mat might be bedding at night and a floor covering by day. A folded textile could be warmth, decoration, storage of value, and comfort all at once. In many homes, textiles were precious because they took time and skill to make. Wool had to be shorn, cleaned, spun, woven, and finished. Linen began as flax in the field, then became fiber, thread, and cloth. Even a simple blanket carried the labor of many hands. As evening settled over a Mediterranean household, the change may have been quiet rather than dramatic. A lamp flame was lowered, a mat was drawn into place, wool was shaken out and folded at the edge of a couch. Linen was smoothed over a pallet, a simple low bed or bedding laid near the floor. The heat of the day faded from clay walls and stone thresholds. Voices softened. Objects that had served the household since morning were gently rearranged for rest. In these ancient rooms, comfort was made by knowledge of materials and by daily habit. Reeds gave firmness and airflow. Wool held warmth. Linen offered a cool, clean touch. Straw and chaff could fill a pad. Wood lifted the body from the floor when a frame was available. Each household used what it had, shaped by climate, work, custom, and care. And as the lamplight of Mesopotamia and Greece grows dim in our imagined rooms, it leads naturally onward, across the same wide sea, toward the Roman world. There too, beds and couches would take many forms, layered with ropes, cloth, cushions, and quiet domestic routines, as evening continued its slow passage through ancient homes. Chapter 6. Roman Beds and Layered Comfort. As evening settled over the Roman world, the day did not end all at once. It softened gradually. In a townhouse, a courtyard might hold the last warmth of the sun in its stone paving. In a country villa, the painted plaster walls cooled after the bright hours of afternoon. Lamps were lit, then later lowered. Sandals were set neatly aside. A cloak was folded over a stool. Somewhere nearby, a wool blanket was shaken once, then drawn into place. Roman sleeping places were not all alike. They changed with wealth, region, household custom, and purpose. A Roman bed or couch was often called a lectus, a Latin word that could mean a bed, a couch, or a place for reclining. This is a useful reminder that furniture in the past did not always fit neatly into modern categories. A surface for resting might also be used for sitting, receiving guests, or reclining during a meal. Romans had different kinds of beds and couches for different parts of life. There were sleeping beds, of course, but also dining couches, resting couches, marriage beds, and couches used in funeral display. Some were everyday objects, simple and practical. Others were more formal, made for ceremony or for showing the standing of a household. Yet beneath these differences was a shared idea. A bed was often a set of layers, carefully arranged, rather than one thick object. Like many modern mattresses, the frame came first. In a modest home, it might be made of wood, plain and serviceable. In a wealthier household, a frame might be more finely crafted, with turned legs, carved details, or bronze and other materials. As with many objects in Roman life, the materials told a quiet story about resources, trade, and status. Across the frame there needed to be support. Some Roman beds used ropes stretched from side to side, or leather straps, or woven webbing. Webbing means strips woven together to make a firm surface, rather like the base of some chairs. These supports held the bedding above the floor and gave the body a place to rest. Over time, ropes or straps could loosen, and a household might tighten or adjust them, keeping the surface steady and useful. Then came the softer layers. A mattress or pad might be placed over the supports. These pads were filled with materials that were available and suitable. Straw could be used, especially in simpler bedding, because it was common, replaceable, and light. Reeds might also be used, particularly where they grew near water. Wool made a warmer, softer filling, and was valued for its ability to hold heat. For the wealthy, feathers could provide a gentler, more yielding surface, though feather bedding was not ordinary for everyone. It is worth pausing with these layers for a moment. A Roman mattress was not usually like a modern mattress with coils or foam hidden inside. It was more often a filled pad, a cushion-like surface, or a sack of stuffing laid over a frame. Its comfort depended on the filling, the thickness, the support beneath it, and the blankets above it. A simple straw-filled pad could be practical and familiar. A wool-stuffed one could be warm. A feather-filled one could be a sign of luxury. Roman bedding could include blankets, coverlets, pillows, and cushions. A coverlet is a top covering, sometimes used for warmth and sometimes also for decoration. Pillows and cushions could support the head or body, especially on couches used for reclining. Textiles mattered greatly. Cloth took labor to produce. Fibers had to be gathered, spun, woven, dyed, and sewn. A fine blanket or coverlet was not just a soft thing, but the result of many skilled hands. In a well-appointed villa, the quiet evening arrangement may have been graceful. A lamp flame wavered in a shallow lamp. A servant or a family member smoothed a coverlet over a couch. A cushion was placed at the right angle. The frame might have gleamed faintly in the low light. The room was not always a private bedroom in the modern sense. Roman homes could be busy, layered spaces, where rooms changed purpose during the day and household members lived close to one another. In a simpler dwelling, the scene would have been less ornate, but no less human. A wooden frame might stand near a wall. A pad stuffed with straw or reeds might be lifted, shaken, and set back down. A wool blanket might be folded at the foot. A person might use a cloak as an extra covering. The air might smell faintly of oil lamp smoke, cooked grain, wool, and cool plaster. The household sounds would gradually fade, a vessel set down, a door closed, a last murmur of voices. Not every Roman slept on a luxurious bed. Not every Roman had a private room. Many arrangements were practical, shared and shaped by the size of the home. Urban apartments could be crowded. Rural households had their own rhythms of work, storage, and rest. Beds and bedding, whether plain or elaborate, belonged to a larger pattern of domestic life. They were part of how people made order at the end of the day. And yet, across these differences, there is something easy to recognize. A frame was chosen or built. A support was stretched across it. A pad was filled. A blanket was drawn close. A lamp was lowered. The body found the familiar shape of its resting place. As the Roman lamps dim in courtyards, villas, workshops, and upper rooms, the story moves gently onward. In the centuries to come across medieval Europe, straw, wool, pallets, bedsteads, and shared warmth would become central to the household's evening quiet. Chapter 7. Sleeping in Medieval Europe. As the story moves into medieval Europe, the sleeping place becomes part of a busy household world. A world of timber beams, stone walls, packed earth floors, hearth smoke, wool cloth, and the soft sound of evening work coming to an end. There was no single medieval way to sleep. A household in a damp northern village, a merchant's home in a town, a monastery guest room, a castle chamber, and a small farm cottage might all arrange rest differently. Bedding changed with wealth, region, season, and the habits of the people who lived there. For many families, a bed was not necessarily the tall, private object we might picture today. It could be a simple pallet, meaning a low, temporary bed or bedding laid close to the floor. It might be a bench with blankets, a wooden platform, a sack filled with straw, or folded wool coverings arranged near the warmth of the hearth. In smaller homes, the room used for cooking, working, eating, and resting might be the same room, changing its purpose as the light changed. One of the most common forms of medieval bedding was a sturdy cloth sack filled with straw. This sack was often called a tick, or ticking. The word could refer to the cloth case itself, and the filling might be straw, feathers, wool, or other materials, depending on what was available and what a household could afford. A straw tick was practical. Straw came from the harvest, could be replaced when needed, and made a softer, warmer layer between the body and the hard surface below. Fresh straw mattered. It was not simply a sign of softness, but also of care and cleanliness. A tick could be shaken, aired, emptied, and filled again. Straw and rushes were also spread on floors in many homes. Rushes are grass-like plants often used for covering floors, and when laid down cleanly, they help soften footsteps, absorb dampness, and make a room feel more finished. One can imagine hands gathering the old rushes, sweeping the floor, and laying fresh stems in a new layer, their dry scent mixing with wood smoke and wool. In a modest household, the evening arrangement might be simple and familiar. A pallet could be pulled near the hearth. Wool blankets, heavy and warm, might be unfolded from a chest or peg. A child might rest beside a parent, siblings might share bedding, and the whole household might settle close enough to share warmth. Shared sleeping was ordinary in many places. It could reflect the limits of space, the cost of textiles, the need for warmth, or simply the customs of the time. Privacy, as later centuries would understand it, was not always the main purpose of a sleeping place. Servants often slept in household rooms, near kitchens, workshops, storage areas, or halls. Apprentices might sleep in the home or workplace of a master, sometimes in shared lodgings. Travelers at inns could also share rooms or beds with others, depending on the inn, the price, and the number of people passing through. These arrangements were practical in a world where heated rooms were few and bedding was valuable. A blanket, a bench, a pallet, or a space near the fire could be part of the quiet order of the night. Wealthier households had more elaborate sleeping arrangements. A wooden bedstead, which is the frame of a bed, might stand in a chamber with rope supports stretched across it. On top could be a mattress or tick, perhaps a feather bed, linen sheets, wool blankets, and a bolster. A bolster is a long pillow or cushion, often placed beneath the head or along the body. Feather beds were softer and warmer, and linen sheets required labor to grow, spin, weave, wash, and store. Such bedding represented comfort, so household resources and skilled work. In these richer homes, bed curtains were especially useful. They were not only decorative. Curtains drawn around a bed helped hold warmth, create privacy, and reduce drafts. A draft is a current of cold air, and in rooms with stone walls, shutters, and open hearths, drafts could be part of ordinary life. Curtains made a small enclosed space within a larger room, a softer chamber inside a chamber. As evening deepened, someone might draw the fabric around the bed, smoothing the coverlet and tucking the blankets close. Much of what we know about medieval bedding comes from records that have survived unevenly. Wills, inventories, household accounts, illustrations, and a smaller number of surviving objects help historians piece together the picture. A will might name a bed, a blanket, a bolster, or a set of sheets being passed from one person to another. An inventory, which is a written list of possessions, might record a feather bed, a wooden frame, or curtains. These records often tell us more about wealthier households because their possessions were more likely to be written down and preserved. The bedding of poorer people is quieter in the record, but it was no less part of daily life. So the medieval sleeping place was not one thing. It was a set of layers, habits, and household rhythms. It might be straw tucked into cloth, a wool blanket near the hearth, a bench softened with coverings, or a curtained bedstead in a private chamber. It might be shared by family, arranged for a guest, or made quickly for an apprentice after the day's work was done. As the hearth burned lower and the rushes underfoot grew still, each home found its own way of making a place for rest, and in the centuries that followed, some beds would become still more carefully made, more richly layered, and more treasured, appearing in wills and inventories as possessions of real importance, passed on from one generation to the next. Chapter 8. The Great Bed and the Humble Pallet. By the late medieval and early modern centuries in Europe, a bed could be much more than a place to rest. In many households, it was one of the most valuable possessions a family owned. Textiles took time to grow, spin, weave, sew, fill, and mend. Wood had to be shaped by skilled hands. Ropes had to be twisted, curtains hung, covers folded, and kept clean. A bed, especially a large and well-furnished one, gathered many kinds of labor into a single quiet object. This is why beds so often appeared in wills and inventories. A will is a document that says who should receive a person's belongings after death. An inventory is a written list of possessions, sometimes made room by room, with careful attention to items of value. In such records, a bed might not mean only the frame. It could mean the whole set of bedding: the bedstead, the ropes, the mattress or straw tick, the feather bed, the bolster, the pillows, the sheets, the blankets, the coverlet, and the curtains. Each part had its own purpose, and together they made a small world of warmth, softness, and shelter. The bedstead was the frame, usually made of wood. Across it, ropes might be laced from side to side or from head to foot, making a firm woven support. From time to time, these ropes needed tightening because use could make them loosen. People today sometimes connect the old phrase "sleep tight" with rope beds, imagining the ropes drawn firm before night. It is a pleasing idea, but the origin of the phrase is uncertain, so it is best held gently, as a possibility rather than a fact. Over the ropes lay the softer layers. A straw tick was a sturdy cloth sack filled with straw, refreshed when needed. A feather bed, when a household could afford one, added a thick, warm softness. A bolster, which is a long pillow or cushion, might rest across the head of the bed, with smaller pillows nearby. Linen sheets could be laid smooth, blankets folded over, and a coverlet spread across the top. The coverlet was both useful and pleasing, a top covering that might be plain, patterned, or carefully stitched. Then there were the curtains. Bed curtains were not only decorative, they helped make a room within a room. In houses where chambers were shared, and where fires, walls, and windows did not always keep out every draft, curtains offered warmth and privacy. Drawn around the bed, they softened the edges of the larger household. Inside them, the air could feel stiller. The light from a candle or rush lamp would become dimmer. The sounds of the house would pass through cloth and become quieter. A well-furnished bed could show status, which means social position or rank. It could also show hospitality. A household that had a good bed might offer it to an honored guest. In some homes, the best bed was not used every night by every member of the family, but kept as a sign of care, readiness, and prosperity. Beds could be inherited, repaired, refilled, and passed along. They belonged not only to the body, but to the story of a household. Among the most famous beds from this period was the Great Bed of Ware, made in England around 1590. It was an enormous bed, far larger than ordinary beds, and it became associated with an inn in the town of Ware. Travelers knew of it, writers mentioned it, and its size made it a curiosity. Yet it was exceptional, not typical. Most beds were much smaller, more practical, and more closely fitted to the rooms and means of the people who used them. Around the great bed of a house, there were many humbler sleeping places. A pallet was a simple temporary bed, often low to the floor, made from a small mattress, blankets, or a straw-filled sack. A truckle bed was a low bed stored beneath a larger one and pulled out when needed. In a household with children, servants, apprentices, or guests, such beds made good use of space. At night they could be drawn out. By day they could be pushed away, leaving the room open for work, meals, and movement. Benches might also serve for rest. A folded cloak, a blanket, or a sack of straw could soften a hard surface. Servants might sleep near the rooms where they worked, apprentices in workshops or shared lodgings, travelers in inns where beds and bedding were used by many. Poorer families might share beds, use straw ticks, or lay bedding directly on the floor. These arrangements were often ordinary and practical, shaped by space, warmth, custom, and available materials. In the evening, a household might grow quiet in layers, much like the bed itself. A coverlet was smoothed by hand. Curtains fell softly around a wooden frame. A pallet was rolled near the hearth. A truckle bed was drawn from beneath the larger bed. Shoes were set aside. A candle was lowered. The ropes held, the straw settled, the blankets gathered warmth. Room by room, the house became still, and beyond the settled walls of such houses were other resting places waiting to be considered. The rolled blankets of travelers, the hammocks of sailors, the rugs of herders, and all the bedding that had to be light enough, strong enough, and simple enough to move with the people who carried it. Chapter 9. Sleep on the Move. Not every resting place stayed in one room or even in one village. For much of history, many people carried their bedding with them or made it from what could be found nearby. A sleeping place might be rolled, folded, tied to a pack, laid across a saddle, tucked into a boat, or spread on the floor of a tent after a long day's work. For travelers, sailors, soldiers, herders, traders, pilgrims, and families who moved with the seasons, bedding had to be practical. It needed to be light enough to carry, strong enough to use again and again, and quick to arrange when evening came. A thick wooden bedstead would not do on a mountain path or a sea voyage. Instead, people relied on cloaks, blankets, bedrolls, rugs, hides, felt mats, hammocks, and simple sacks that could be filled for a night with straw, leaves, or other soft materials. A bedroll was one of the simplest answers to the needs of travel. It was bedding made to be rolled up and carried. A blanket, a ground cloth, and perhaps another layer for warmth could be folded together, bound with cord, and tied to a pack. Sometimes it was carried by a person. Sometimes it was placed on an animal or wagon. When the day's journey ended, the roll could be opened again, smoothed out by hand, and made ready in only a few moments. A cloak could serve in the same adaptable way. By day it was clothing, sheltering the shoulders from wind, sun, or rain. By night it could become a blanket, a wrap, or a soft layer beneath the body. This kind of usefulness mattered deeply when every object had to earn its place. A traveler might own only a few things, but each thing could have several purposes. Cloth could be warmth, privacy, a bundle, a shade, a cushion, or a cover. In open country, a person might choose a place near a low wall, beneath a tree, beside a wagon, or within the circle of a camp. The bedding would be arranged according to weather and ground. In dry places, a folded blanket or mat might be enough. In colder country, hides and wool helped hold warmth close. In damp ground, people often looked for ways to lift or separate themselves from moisture, using branches, mats, rugs, or a raised platform when one was available. Among pastoral communities, meaning people who lived partly or mostly by herding animals, bedding often came from the same animals that shaped daily life. Wool could be woven into blankets or pressed into felt. Felt is made when wool fibers are matted together into a dense, warm fabric. Hides could be used as coverings or ground layers. Rugs and felts might soften the floor of a tent, create a place to sit, add color and beauty, and become bedding at night. These traditions varied widely from place to place. Grasslands, deserts, forests, high mountains, and cold plains all called for different arrangements. A felt mat in a round tent, a woven rug in a desert camp, a hide near a small fire, a folded blanket beneath canvas. Each was part of a local understanding of comfort. Mobile life did not mean careless life. It often required careful order: what to pack first, what to keep dry, what to shake out, what to place nearest the doorway, and what to unroll when the evening air cooled. In tents and portable dwellings, bedding could also help define the inside of a home. Rugs, mats, and folded textiles might mark where people sat, worked, ate, and rested. A single textile could be practical and beautiful at once. Patterns woven into a rug could carry family skill, regional style, and memory. The same rug might insulate against the ground, welcome a guest, cushion a child, and become part of the quiet arrangement of night. Along roads and trade routes, inns offered another kind of temporary rest. An inn was not always a place of private rooms and separate beds. Often travelers shared spaces and sometimes shared beds, according to custom, cost, and availability. The quality of bedding varied widely. Some inns provided straw-filled sacks, blankets, or simple pallets. Others might offer more comfortable arrangements for those who could pay. A traveler might bring a cloak or blanket even when lodging was expected, because familiar bedding was useful in uncertain places. For soldiers and others moving in organized groups, bedding had to fit the rhythm of march and camp. Blankets, cloaks, and rolls could be packed quickly. Sacks might be filled with straw or leaves when supplies allowed, then emptied before moving on. Such bedding was not always soft in the modern sense, but it was adaptable. It could be repaired, dried near a fire, shared for warmth, or folded into a seat during the day. At sea, bedding had its own special requirements. Ships had limited space, and the motion of water changed everything. Sailors needed resting places that could be put away, kept off wet or hard decks, and adjusted to the movement of the vessel. The hammock answered these needs very well. A hammock is a hanging bed made from fabric, netting, or woven fiber. It can be suspended between 2 points, then taken down and stowed when not in use. Hammocks were used by indigenous peoples of the Americas before Europeans adopted them. In warm regions, they allowed air to move around the body and lifted the sleeper away from the ground. After contact with the Americas, European sailors increasingly learned the value of hammocks. Over time, hammocks became common in naval use. They saved space, moved with the ship's motion, and helped keep sailors away from damp decks. A row of hammocks could be hung at night and cleared away by day, leaving room for the work of the ship. There is a quiet grace in such practical design. A hammock sways rather than resists. A bedroll opens and closes like a small piece of home. A cloak keeps its owner company through the changing hours. A rug carries warmth, color, and usefulness from one place to another. These were not lesser forms of bedding, but thoughtful answers to moving lives. As evening settled over a road, a shore, a camp, or a ship, the same gestures appeared again and again. A pack was set down, A blanket was unfastened, a mat was shaken free of dust, a cloak was drawn closer. A hammock was tied securely and left to move gently with the air or water. Around these simple acts, the world became more orderly and familiar, and from these traveling beds, the story turns naturally toward other low and flexible sleeping traditions. Mats laid on clean floors, futons folded away by day, rugs spread in warm rooms, platforms raised just enough for air to pass beneath them. Across the world, close to the floor or just above it, people continued to make resting places that were practical, clean, and beautifully suited to their homes. Chapter 10: Sleeping Close to the Floor Around the World. In many parts of the world, a comfortable sleeping place has not always meant a tall bed or a thick mattress. Often, it has meant something lower, simpler, and carefully suited to the room, the climate, and the rhythms of daily life. A mat spread across a clean floor, a folded quilt laid over warm boards, a woven frame lifted just above the ground, or a rug arranged inside a round tent could all answer the same quiet need, a place that is familiar, practical, and restful. Sleeping close to the floor is not a sign of being behind the times. It can be a thoughtful choice. A low sleeping place may be easy to clean, easy to fold away, and well matched to warm air, cool floors, or small rooms that serve more than one purpose. In many homes, the space used for resting at night can become a place for sitting, eating, working, or welcoming guests during the day. Bedding that can be rolled, folded, aired, or stacked gives a household flexibility, and flexibility has often been one of the great comforts of home. In Japan, one well-known tradition is the futon laid on tatami. A futon, in this sense, is not the same as many Western sofa beds that use the same word. A Japanese futon is a set of bedding, usually including a padded mattress-like layer and covers, that can be spread out when needed and folded away when the room is used for something else. Beneath it may be tatami, traditional floor mats with a firm inner core and a surface woven from rush, a grass-like plant. Tatami has a gentle texture and a faint grassy scent, especially when new, and it gives the room a clear, orderly feeling. The firmness of tatami and the softness of a futon make a balanced surface, not high, not deeply sinking, but supportive and neat. In the morning, the futon can be folded and stored, allowing the room to open again. A space that held bedding in the quiet hours may later hold a low table, cushions, a tea tray, or simply the calm emptiness of a swept floor. This way of arranging a room shows that comfort is not only about softness. It is also about cleanliness, order, and the ease with which a home can change through the day. In Korea, another tradition shaped the sleeping surface in a different way. Traditional Korean homes often used ondol, an underfloor heating system. Ondol means that heat moved beneath the floor, warming the surface above. In cold weather, this made low bedding especially practical. Rather than lifting the body far from the floor, people could lay bedding directly where warmth gently rose. The floor itself became part of the comfort. An ondol room could hold warmth long after the fire had been tended. Bedding placed on the heated floor gathered that warmth, and the room became a sheltered place against winter air. This does not mean every Korean home, past or present, was the same, or that all people in Korea today sleep in the same way. Customs change with buildings, cities, incomes, and personal preferences. But the old logic of ondol is clear and elegant. When warmth comes from below, low bedding belongs naturally to the room. In warmer regions, low sleeping surfaces often answer a different need. Where nights remain mild, heavy layers may be less useful than airflow, cleanliness, and materials that can be shaken out or aired. Woven mats made from reeds, rushes, palm leaves, or grasses can create a surface that is firm, breathable, and easy to move. They can be rolled in the morning, carried outside, dried in the sun, or brushed clean. A mat may be thin, but it is not thoughtless. It is a crafted object, made by hands that understand fiber, pattern, and the feel of a surface against the body. In some tropical and subtropical places, bedding may be laid close to the floor. In others, a low platform may be preferred. In still others, a raised bed helps air move underneath. There is no single rule for warm climates. Local materials, insects, humidity, architecture, and family custom all shape the arrangement. A reed mat cooling in evening air, a cotton sheet folded nearby, a low wooden platform under a shaded roof. Each one is a local answer to local conditions. Across South Asia, one especially enduring form is the charpoy, also called the charpai. It is a woven bed frame often made with a wooden frame and a network of rope, cord or webbing stretched across it. A charpoy is portable, airy, and useful in warm climates. It can be moved into shade during the day, set in a courtyard, carried to a veranda, or brought indoors. Air can pass beneath and through the woven surface, making it cooler than a thick enclosed mattress in many settings. The charpoy also reminds us that low or simple does not mean temporary or unimportant. A well-made woven bed can be repaired, restrung, and used for years. Its pattern may be plain or decorative. It may serve as a place to sit, talk, work, or rest. Like many sleeping surfaces in history, it belongs to the whole life of the household, not only to the quiet hours. Farther north and across parts of Central and Inner Asia, people have long used layers of felt, rugs, and low bedding inside tents and yurts. A yurt is a portable round dwelling used by some nomadic peoples with a wooden framework and textile coverings. In such homes, textiles are more than decoration. They soften the floor, hold warmth, mark living spaces, and add beauty. Felt, made by pressing wool fibers together into a dense fabric, can be thick and insulating. Rugs can be spread in layers, creating comfort over the ground, while also bringing color and pattern into the round room. Here again, bedding is closely tied to movement, climate, and skilled making. A rug can be bedding, seating, insulation, and a treasured household object. A felt mat can be rolled or lifted. A low sleeping place can be arranged in the evening and changed again in the morning. The home is flexible, and the bedding moves with it. Today, many households around the world combine older customs with newer materials. A family may use a modern mattress in one room and floor bedding in another. A futon may be paired with newer padding. A heated floor may warm modern quilts. Traditions do not simply disappear when new materials arrive. They blend, adapt, and continue in forms that suit each household. The history of bedding is not a straight road leading only toward the thick modern mattress. It is more like a wide landscape, full of many paths. Some rise high on carved legs. Some hang gently in the air. Some roll into a corner at dawn. Some rest on warmed floors, woven mats, or layers of felt and wool. Each one carries a quiet kind of knowledge: how to use what is near, how to keep a room clean, how to stay warm or cool, how to make space serve the changing needs of the day. And from these many low and carefully arranged sleeping places, the story turns again toward the object many people now call a mattress: the filled tick, the cotton layer, the spring, the latex sheet, the foam pad. Like the mat and the rug, it too grew from ordinary materials and human hands, changing slowly over time. Chapter 11. From stuffed ticks to modern mattresses. The modern mattress did not arrive all at once, like a single new object placed quietly into every home. It came together slowly, through many small changes in materials, craft, trade, cleaning, and expectation. A mattress, in its simplest meaning, is a padded surface for resting. For much of history, that padding was made from whatever could be gathered, grown, combed, clipped, or carried nearby. In many households, an earlier mattress might have been a tick, a sturdy cloth case filled with straw, hay, chaff, wool, cotton, horsehair, feathers, or down. Chaff means the dry husks left after grain has been separated from its useful seed. Down means the very soft feathers found close to a bird's body, valued for lightness and warmth. The tick itself could be shaken, aired, opened, emptied, and filled again. It was not always a permanent object, but part of a regular household rhythm. Straw ticks were especially practical in farming regions. Straw was the dry stalk left after harvest, and it could be replaced when it grew flattened or dusty. A family might refill a sack with clean straw, smooth the cloth by hand, and lay blankets over it. The result was simple, familiar, and suited to the life around it. Comfort did not depend only on softness. It also came from freshness, warmth, dryness, and the knowledge that the bedding could be renewed. Other fillings offered different qualities. Wool, gathered from sheep, could be warm and resilient. Cotton, as trade and textile production expanded, became more common in many places, especially where cotton growing, spinning, and weaving were well established. Cotton batting, meaning soft sheets or layers of cotton fiber, could be laid evenly inside a cover. Feathers and down made bedding lighter, softer, and warmer, but they were usually more costly. They required birds, careful collection, and a well-made cover to keep the filling in place. Horsehair was another valued material. It may sound unusual at first, but horsehair has useful properties for upholstery and mattresses. It is springy, durable, and breathable, meaning air can move through it more easily than through some dense materials. When cleaned, curled, and worked into a mattress or cushion, it could lift slightly under the body and then return toward its shape. In a quiet workshop, one can imagine fabric spread across a frame, horsehair teased and arranged, and the maker's hands guiding the layers until the surface felt even. For a long time, bedding was made close to home or by local craftspeople. A mattress might be repaired, restuffed, or remade rather than replaced. But as towns grew, trade widened, and factories developed, bedding changed as well. Cloth could be produced in greater quantities. Cotton and other fibers moved through larger markets. More people encountered mattresses as manufactured goods, not only as household projects. In the 19th century, metal springs began to appear in furniture and bedding. A spring is a shaped piece of metal that compresses under weight and then pushes back. Over time, springs became part of some beds and mattresses. Inner spring mattresses with metal coils inside became increasingly common from the late 19th century into the 20th. They did not replace older bedding everywhere, and not immediately. Straw, wool, cotton, mats, quilts, and floor bedding continued in many homes. Still, springs offered a new kind of support, a gentle resilience hidden beneath layers of cloth and padding. The making of mattresses also became tied to standardized sizes. Earlier beds and bedding often varied from household to household. A frame might be made for a room, a family, or a particular set of textiles. With industrial production, retail systems, and modern housing, it became useful to sell mattresses in more predictable dimensions. Standard sizes made it easier to buy frames, sheets, blankets, and mattress covers that would fit together. This was not merely a change in comfort, but a change in manufacturing and daily life. Hygiene, too, shaped the modern mattress. Washable sheets mattered greatly. So did better laundering, more enclosed mattress covers, and growing awareness of pests, dust, and allergens. Loose organic fillings like straw and chaff could be refreshed, but they could also hold dust if neglected. Manufactured materials, tighter covers, and regular washing offered new ways to keep bedding clean. Yet older methods of airing, sunning, beating, shaking, and replacing bedding remained useful and practical in many places. The 20th century brought still more materials. Latex foam developed in the early 20th century, with commercial mattress products appearing in the 1930s. Latex is a rubber-like material that may be made from rubber tree sap or produced synthetically. It can feel springy and supportive. After the middle of the 20th century, polyurethane foam became common. This is a synthetic foam used in many cushions and mattresses. Later, memory foam entered consumer bedding after research connected to NASA in the 1960s helped develop foams that softened with heat and pressure, then slowly returned to shape. It was not a mattress invented directly for bedrooms, but a material whose later uses included bedding. Today, many mattresses combine several older and newer ideas at once. A single mattress may hold metal coils, foam, latex, cotton or wool padding, synthetic fibers, and a fabric cover stitched around them. It may be firm or soft, thick or thin, simple or complex. And alongside it, many other sleeping traditions continue. Futons folded away in the morning, mats rolled and aired, rugs layered in cool climates, charpoys set where air can pass beneath, and handmade bedding refreshed with the seasons. So the story of the modern mattress is not a straight road from discomfort to comfort. It is more like a long weaving of materials and habits. Straw shaken into a tick, cotton batting laid flat, horsehair springing lightly under cloth, coils resting quietly inside a cover, clean sheets folded from the laundry. Each belongs to a wider history of people making rest from the materials around them, guided by climate, craft, custom, and care. And as the clean sheets are smoothed, and the familiar shape of the modern bed comes back into view, the deeper question remains gentle and unchanged. What have people always needed from the places where they rest? Warmth, safety, softness, dryness, cleanliness, and a sense of belonging. Those needs will carry us into the final reflection, where many different sleeping places can be seen as thoughtful answers beneath the same quiet night. Chapter 12. The Human Art of Rest. When we look back across the long history of human resting places, the story does not move in a single straight line from simple to better or from old to new. It moves more like a river, dividing and joining again, shaped by land, weather, custom, skill, and need. A reed mat beside warm water, a wool blanket in a mountain home, a linen sheet in dry heat, a straw tick in a timbered room, a hammock on a ship, a futon on tatami, and a modern mattress in a quiet house are all different answers to an old and gentle question. How shall the body be supported, warmed, and kept at ease? Across time, people have looked for many of the same things: warmth when the air was cool, dryness when the ground held damp, softness, though softness could mean many things, a layer of grass, a folded hide, a pad of wool, a firm mat that kept the body level, cleanliness as bedding was shaken, aired, swept, burned, renewed, washed, or folded away, safety in the closeness of a household, near a hearth, behind curtains, inside a tent, above the floor, or among familiar walls, quiet when the work of the day had settled, and belonging, the comfort of knowing one's place among people, objects, and routines. Again and again, human hands made rest from what the world nearby could offer. Near rivers and marshes, there were reeds, rushes, and sedges, plants with long stems that could be cut, dried, woven, and laid smooth. In fields there were grasses and straw, the stems left after harvest, useful because they could be refreshed and replaced. Where sheep were kept, there was wool, warm and springy, spun into blankets or pressed into felt. Where animals provided hides, there were skins and furs that held warmth close. In lands where flax grew, there was linen, cool and strong, made from plant fibers with patient work. From forests came wood for frames, platforms, bedsteads, and headrests. From plant fibers came cord and rope, stretched across frames or twisted into hammocks and nets. From birds came feathers and down, light and soft, precious where they could be gathered and used. Later, cotton moved through agriculture and trade, becoming another familiar layer in the long making of bedding. A bed, in many times and places, was not one object. It was a gathering of layers, a frame and ropes, a mat and blanket, a sack filled with straw, a rug on a tent floor, a woven couch with a folded cloth, a platform, a curtain, a coverlet, a pillow, a bolster. The shape of rest could be temporary or carefully built, shared or private, low to the floor or raised on legs. It could be rolled in the morning, hung for airing, tucked beneath another bed, carried on a journey, or left standing as one of the most valued things in a household. Much of this history is quiet in the record. Wood decays, straw disappears, wool wears away, mats are used until they are no longer worth keeping. The bedding of ordinary people is often less visible than the furniture of kings, nobles, and wealthy households, because fine beds were more likely to be written into inventories, painted in pictures, placed in tombs, or preserved with care. An inventory is simply a written list of possessions, and such lists often tell us that beds mattered. Yet they do not always tell us every nightly habit, every folded blanket, every mat laid down by a hearth, every child resting near family warmth. So the history of sleep surfaces asks for patience. It asks us to imagine not with certainty, but with care. Archaeologists find traces, ash, plant fibers, woven impressions, fragments of cloth, wooden frames, metal fittings. Historians read household accounts, wills, travelers' descriptions, and old words for beds and bedding. Some records are detailed, others are brief, and in the spaces between them, we can still see the steady pattern of human adaptation. Adaptation means choosing or changing something to fit a need. Ingenuity means practical cleverness, the thoughtful ability to make life work with what is at hand. That ingenuity did not belong only to inventors or workshops. It belonged to the person who shook out a mat and laid it where the evening air was coolest, to the one who refreshed clean straw inside a cloth tick, to the one who tightened ropes beneath a bedstead, to the one who folded wool at the foot of a sleeping place, to the one who drew curtains against a draft, to the one who spread a rug across the floor of a round tent, or unrolled a futon across tatami, or slung a hammock where it could sway with the motion of a ship. Many traditions have continued into the present. Others change slowly, blending old habits with new materials. A household might keep mats and also own a mattress. A family might use floor bedding in one room and a raised bed in another. A modern mattress might hold springs, foam, cotton, wool, latex, or several layers together, yet it still belongs to the same broad story, people arranging materials so that the body can rest in a way that feels right. There is no single final form, no one best answer for every climate, culture, or body. Firmness can be comfort, airflow can be comfort, warmth from below can be comfort, a rolled mat in a clean room can be comfort, a thick bed with soft sheets can be comfort, a familiar blanket used for years can hold its own kind of quiet reassurance. And now, in the mind's eye, many places grow still beneath the same wide night sky. Reed mats lie smooth near river air, linen cools in a warm room, wool blankets rest folded in lamplight, furs hold warmth in cold country, a hammock hangs almost motionless, a rug softens the floor of a tent, straw settles inside its cloth cover, a futon rests upon woven rush, a modern mattress waits beneath clean sheets. Different materials, different rooms, different centuries, yet the gesture is much the same. Hands arrange what is needed. The light lowers. The fire fades to embers. The house, the tent, the ship, the courtyard, the village, and the city become quiet in their own ways. Across the long human story, rest has always been an art made from care, from custom, and from the simple wish to be warm, supported, and at peace.